It's Juliet Davis, and I just want to take you through the assignments of COM 302, which is Digital Media and Design for Communication. Just give you a little overview and see how you submit your assignments, as well as how your assignments will be graded using the grading rubric. So the first thing to note is that this assignment sheet is accessible anywhere, from your syllabus, from Blackboard. There are links everywhere to this assignment sheet, so worry not, you can easily find it. The first thing to note is on the very first page is a summary of all of the projects. So that's your summary, but when you want to get into the grading rubric, the submission sheet, etc., then you can just click here. It's all one big document, and you don't want to be scrolling through, a million pages. It also has samples of work and all that. You don't want to be scrolling through probably a million pages. So you can just jump down. Let's take a look at each assignment and where to jump. So also notice that the docx file is available to you, because if you find that easier to use for your submission sheet to insert graphics, etc., then feel free to use that file instead of this PDF. The first assignment is going to be learning the ins and outs of InDesign, and that's something that, of course, we're supposed to learn in 210, but is usually not taught. So it is one of the most important programs. Creative directors, art directors to this day say that InDesign is the most important program because it is used for both online and print media. It is not just, we lay out magazines in it. But the first assignment actually is going to lay out a magazine, and I'll tell you why. Because it is probably one of the more complex things that can be done with InDesign, and so it will help us learn all the technical ins and outs of type layout, of all of the different tools and palettes in InDesign, and it'll do so very quickly. And that's what I like, is to very quickly help you learn all of those ins and outs of a program. So we're going to actually do that in one day. And then you'll create a project there, and you can see here, you click down on the submission sheet, and then it tells you how to submit. You can always click back to the top, the grading rubric, you click and go through it, and it's back to the top again. So this is pretty quick and easy. Of course, we're going to be going over all the criteria with each assignment, as well as all of the lessons involved, but this is just an overview. So the second project is social media plus page layout. And usually what we find is that it's a combination of media and channels that work in a campaign. So we're going to use InDesign to create a social media post and a flyer, because that flyer and post are going to help us. They're very simple layouts. A flyer gives you lots of space to play with, and a social media post does the same, where you're going to have a very little bit of text, a big image, and it's going to be really helpful to learn the fundamentals of using type and graphics together in a space. So that's why we do that. Then when we move on to the third one, and of course here, submission sheet, and then back to the top. Love the back to the top buttons, the grading rubric, and back to the top. We're going to go down here then next to branding and logo design. And branding is not just about logo design, of course. And in this case, you're going to create a new brand for a new company, an organization, product line, or service of your choice, and that you may really want to start up, or that may be fictitious, but you're going to go through all the steps of really thinking through a new product, which is I created a branding workbook, which we work through, and it talks about target audience, your competition, what is your unique value proposition, all of the different marketing aspects of thinking about a new business or new product. And then we go to developing a logo, and then later we go to actually developing more work that is part of that project, part of that branding project. But we start with the logo, and you can see clicking on the submission sheet, here we go. And also you'll see there are examples of past student projects, student marketing reports, all of that kind of thing that you can take a look at. That will kind of help you get an idea of what people have done in the past. And then there's a grading rubric, of course. The next project then, I know this seems like a lot of projects. It is. The next project is a social media page and post. Now, one of the things that our students are often asked to do is to create a social media page for a business or an event or something like that. Often asked to do that either on the job or in an internship, and students have no idea how to do that. So we're really going to take a look at when you're asked to put together a Twitter page or open up something new like this. How do you go about it? How do you get the dimensions? How do you optimize those images so that you can look like a professional in doing that? So you're going to create a social media page and post, and it can be for the business you create, or it can be for something else. And I usually have options as well, specific brands that I can give you if you want to switch brands. So there's submission 1 is the social media page, and you can see down here if we click that the examples are different header banners, etc. And then that's that grading rubric. Then we have Facebook post of original content that you create for that business and that post. Now it can be animation, it can be still images, it can be a lot of different things. So going back to the top, let's go now to the next project, which is really when we start to culminate into creative, critical thinking about images. This is called conceptual elaboration. You can do it in the medium of your choice. It can be, for example, it can even be TikTok or Snapchat or Instagram or, pretty much anything you'd like to do. It can be a magazine cover. But the key is that it should compel a viewer to act in some way, such as clicking through, donating, making a purchase, clicking the like button, buying a magazine, changing behavior of some sort. So what we do is teach you how to use techniques such as metaphor, synecdoche, reversal, exaggeration, parody, satire, all sorts of ways of conceptualizing communication in such a way that is going to really hit the viewer between the eyes and grab attention and make them think or make them have an emotional reaction. It oftentimes is humor, but it can be, many different reactions. And we're really looking for that audience reaction in this work. You're going to be using Photoshop primarily to alter images and communicate using imagery that is highly attention getting. So it could be combining a shark with a horse. It could be, because students have done many things. In fact, let's take a look at, I think we have quite a few examples. If we click the submission sheet, we can see here below. Yeah, there are a lot of examples of student work that really kind of, hit you between the eyes, or in this case, woo! Yes, definitely hitting somebody between the eyes there on that. But these, you can see here, cool beans for Jelly Belly. These are using your illustration techniques in Illustrator or Photoshop work to combine images. You can see here a magazine cover for Green Living where we have a fish that's made of all plastic. You can see here Christmas the Right Way, and it's, for flights to Florida, and we see the pineapple as the Christmas tree, that kind of thing. We're really getting into communicating visually with specific creative techniques. that are really going to grab people. So that's that particular assignment. I should have done the back to top button. The very last assignment is an online portfolio. Now, usually what I do is have a web design project for a client. But I have found that that is very detailed, elaborate, and intensive, and probably deserves its own class. The online portfolio will help people to develop their own job market materials as well. So the online portfolio, we have time to get into a lot of what a professional portfolio would look like. We don't have time to help you develop your resume, although there are plenty of resources that help you do that. But you can see there is a submission sheet and a checklist. And basically you come down here and this is the online portfolio checklist. Now, you might think this checklist is super long. Oh, before we get into that, you submit your URL. So the 6 o'clock class submits here, the 8 o'clock class submits there, but we also have you transfer a copy of your website to the school archives. And there are some instructions here to do that. And that allows us to archive your work for some assessment that we do for SACS accreditation requirements. The online portfolio checklist is, as you can see, lengthy. Well, 3 pages long. Okay, it gives some examples of websites, etc. It's lengthy, but really what will happen is we're working through this together. So by the time you get done, I always say, look at the checklist last, and then just make sure you have all these things. I also want to turn you on to a website, adprmajor.com or .org, and there is an entire section of that website devoted to how to develop your online portfolio, how to create your resume in the communication fields, how to conduct a job search, how to network, some different opportunities on there, what kind of jobs are out there for people in your fields and communications, and specifically strategic communications as well, how much money these positions pay, all kinds of information on that site. So that is adprmajor.com. If you have any questions for me about this overview of projects, please let me know. The next thing I want to talk with you about just briefly is how to submit your work, because this is a little weird for this class. All right, so let's say you are submitting this page layout magazine spread. All right, this is kind of the first project anyway. You're going to submit it several different ways, and I know this sounds strange, but first is the submission sheet. And this is the submission sheet. You complete this submission sheet, and you can use the doc if you prefer, if it's easier. And you do 2 things. First, you fill it all out and you print it out for submission to me, including the grading rubric that follows right after this. Okay, so what you're going to do is insert, it's just sort of a thumbnail image like this, so that I can see what image at a glance this is. And I am marking up, I'm marking up the grading rubric and giving you notes here. And so these 2 things sort of go together, the submission sheet and the grading rubric. But then you're also going to print out a high resolution version of your work. And that's so that it's full scale and I can actually mark things like, okay, here, alignment issue here, or, I can circle things and the little details so that you can revise for your portfolio. And that's key. Your online portfolio is going to have these projects revised, basically. You're going to staple big letters, staple, the submission sheet with the rubric to that high resolution printout so that I have both. I can fill out that grading rubric. I can mark up the real sized printout. I can, we have all of that. And then last but not least, you're just going to take this submission sheet alone and upload it to Blackboard for our class archives of projects. So that what that does is it gives us a little thumbnail of the work, and it gives us the grading rubric as well. So I know that just sounds like a lot of submitting, but you get used to it after the very first one. You'll get used to it, and then after that it's just like, oh yeah, it's a breeze, and it becomes automatic. So I just wanted to let you know about that. I'm really big on staplers. I don't accept loose leaf submissions, and the reason for that is that if your submissions are flying everywhere, I don't know whose grading rubric is with whose project. Sometimes people don't even put their names on their projects themselves, so the only names are on the actual first page of the submission sheet, and I can't connect it to anything else. Another thing that happens if you use, for example, paper clips, somebody else's submission can get stuck in the back behind yours. It's happened many times in the past. That's why I don't accept this anymore. And then all of a sudden the person says, I handed in my project, and I say, I don't have your project. I don't know where it is. And that's because it's stuck behind somebody else's project. So let's not go through all that drama and get a freaking stapler. They're $2. Okay. And some people ask me, why don't I have a stapler for them? And there are two reasons for that. One is that it would take one giant AF stapler for me to be able to staple everybody's projects. And the second thing is, I just ain't your secretary. That's just that simple. I'm just not going to chase you around stapling your papers for you. So please, as you can tell, it is my neurotic, little obsessive pet peeve from past traumas of submissions. So thank you very much for helping me out with that. And let me know if you have questions about your assignment sheet. Thank you. I want to mention that there is on the second page requirements for all projects, and you can see that, for example, no layout templates can be used for a print project. Templates can be used for web and social media projects, but for print projects, no, and for anything that requires your completely original work, no. So each one of the projects is going to say what you're allowed to use, and just be really careful of templates, because then you're not learning anything. Plus, we have seen those Canva templates over and over again. I can spot them a mile away, and so can everybody else. So second, all projects must contain a minimum of 70% original work, and the logo project must be 100% your original work. So 70% is really the lowest amount of original work that you can have in a project. The creative aspects of the project must be 100% original, so the concept, etc. You can use, for some projects, outside media. When you do that, in your portfolio, you can present it under the auspices of fair use or speculative ads, that you would. These are sort of, you're choosing, I would do this for Coca-Cola or Mercedes-Benz, and of course you're going to use a Coca-Cola can or Mercedes-Benz car. Now, that is a gray area in terms of copyright and fair use for a portfolio, but it tends to be a rather common practice, and so as long as you say, hey, this is, you frame it properly, Probably won't get into too much trouble. But again, I am not a lawyer, so I am just saying, if you can use original work, that's the best. When possible, avoid infringement, even for classwork. And here are ways to do it. Of course, there are lots of images you can use for free, such as Unsplash images, Pixabay, etc. So use some of those. Suggested process. This can be important. Oh, sorry about that. Suggested process. So when you're starting out and you're not sure of a topic, brainstorm things that interest you. Start now, before class even starts, to brainstorm topics. Surf the web for inspirational work. And I'm not talking about work that you want to copy, work that's identical to what you're trying to do, but instead more to create kind of what we would think of as a mood board, so that you can be looking at colors and looking at emotions you want to evoke and thoughts you want to evoke, and how to best do that, and how you might want to go to look at completely different media. And that's what a lot of creative people suggest. Go to a symphony, go to a theater production. You can get ideas from places that are unexpected and unrelated. Second, you want to collect or draft potential images for your layouts, search for fonts that interest you, and then sketch. Just get pencil and paper and start sketching. Most art directors do about 50 different sketches for something, for a layout. I'm not going to require you to do that. I usually require 10 because you're just starting out. And then we discuss those. But then you also need to either select or write error-free text, and select appropriate images that are going to evoke the emotions or thought processes or responses that you're looking for. Finally, you're going to revise continually for improvement, seeking feedback as you go. And all too often, you're going to find it takes thick skin to be in this business, because I've worked with many ad agencies. I've freelanced for many ad agencies in this town, and I can tell you that there have been times where I thought I just nailed something so amazingly. It's just like the most brilliant thing in the world. I'm patting myself on the head. I send it, to the CEO or the account supervisor, whatever, and I get a nasty gram back or something like, I think we need to rethink this. I think we need to talk. That's like, ew. I've learned to sleep on what my ecstatic emotions over my own work, because before I send it to a client. And then sometimes it can be just as simple as the client didn't receive the right thing, or it couldn't read it well, or the audio wasn't working on their end. I mean, all kinds of things can happen. I had a situation in an ad agency once where I was doing work for a huge client, a yacht. This business makes yachts, they're dealing with, just like super, super upscale people. And so I did this whole project with all this, animation and all this stuff, and it was amazing music, and I send it to the agency and forgot to tell them to turn the audio on. It was that simple. The agency writes back to me and says, please, come to see us right away. This is not what we wanted. And I was just like, I couldn't believe it. I put all this time in it. I thought it was brilliant. I get to the office. I get into the president's office, and I said, did you try did you use the audio? And he's like, oh no. So he clicks the audio, turns it on, the animation plays, the music is playing, and all of a sudden he and everybody in the agency is dancing to the audio, because that is what made that project great, is that synchronized, that the imagery was animated to that music. And without the music, it was a piece of crap, so you just never know what's going to happen, and you have to be ready for that feedback, and you have to be ready if it's not working. I have one other very brief story, another ad agency in town where I did an animation of a wave, literally a small wave in a tiny banner ad, and I redid that wave over 50 times because each time he said it's just not quite rolling into the shore exactly the way we want it. And I was trying to connect, my brain waves with his brain waves to see how that wave was supposed to exactly crest and fall and smooth out to the shore. And to this day, it's like, wow, So we do things often over and over and over again. And so be prepared to revise continually for improvement because that's what this business is all about. And so that's really my best advice as we end this look at assignments and what to prepare for. Submission requirements, we went over, but I wanted to come down here and mention, please don't print out something or be prepared to submit something right before it's due in class, because projects, we would never do this with a client because we know things go wrong. So projects often don't appear the way they do on the screen if you're printing out something. So technical issues with printers can arise at the last minute. You might say, well, I'll never need to send something in print. Believe me, you're going to need to send a lot of things in print. You're going to be printing out things like marketing books or marketing proposals and color schemes and all kinds of things that they're going to look at. So also keep in mind projects are due at the beginning of class. So let's not sneak into the doorway and say, I'm really sorry, but I'm in the middle of printing, so I'll be right back, because honestly, your project's already late, so it's already got points docked, and you might as well sit down and not miss the class because you're going to miss important information. So that's really my last hurrah, my last beg of you, that we make sure your work is submitted, prepared for submission in advance, and that you are ready to take feedback and what we call kill your darlings, as Faulkner said, or it's actually debated whether Mark Twain said it or not, but killing your darlings is what creative people have to do. Oftentimes we fall in love with our work. Oh, I love this. But then it's like people tell you, oh, you have to get rid of that, or you have to change that. And, or your article's too long. You have to cut it in half or whatever. And we just get used to that in this business so that it really doesn't faze us. We're used to killing our darlings. So get used to having some thick skin, get used to learning a whole lot from these projects. And I'm excited to work with you. So thank you.